Now to a dire warning about climate change. According to a new report, experts say that we have until 2030 to avoid catastrophe. It also says if unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet.
Climate Solution, a revealing documentary by United in Heart, Part 104. Continue watching to find out more.
Chimachukma means how are you in the Choctaw language. I'm Leon. The kind-hearted people of the Choctaw Nation thank you for caring deeply about our precious Mother Earth. May you be blessed by heaven in all you do. Greetings, concerned viewers, and welcome to part 1 of our 4-part series, Climate Solution, a revealing documentary by United in Heart. United in Heart is a non-profit organization co-founded in 2018 by Mr. Arvin Paranjpe and his wife, Mrs. Nandhini Paranjpe. The group's mission is to use scientific studies conducted by renowned climate scientists to quickly enhance global awareness about the urgency of climate change and to share the quickest, most efficient ways to address the issue. In February 2021, United in Heart released an informative documentary entitled United in Heart: Hunger and Climate Solutions. On today's program, we'll explore the first part of this important film.
Now to a dire warning about climate change. According to a new report, experts say that we have until 2030 to avoid catastrophe. It also says if unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet. The report focuses on what could happen if global temperatures rise by more than 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. It would likely mean more erratic weather, dangerous heat waves, rising sea levels, and dying coral reefs.
I think scientists are beginning to flap their arms and get excited. But what we also have to do is look at the whole problem, because I think the negotiators now realize there is a problem. But what they don't seem to realize is that they're not proposing solutions that will effectively deal with it. And as scientists, when we look at this big picture, we can see that.
As Dr. Hansen implies, climate change is both an environmental problem and an education problem. My name is Arvin Paranjpe, and for 10 years I helped guide the utilization of key university scientific discoveries. I'm here to tell you that a practical solution to stop climate change was discovered. I'll explain the climate solution in a minute. First, let's pinpoint the education gap.
So let me just give you a little background on the problem. What is permafrost? Permafrost is ground that's been frozen for a long time. The name suggests permanently frozen, if only it were. 24% of the northern hemisphere land area is permafrost. We think that in that permafrost there is about 1,500 gigatons of carbon, and for context, that's about twice what's in the atmosphere now. So it's a truly enormous amount of carbon. And what's happening is, as the Arctic warms, and I think you all know the Arctic is warming at least twice as fast as the rest of the planet, this previously frozen matter is starting to decay, and as it starts to decay and decompose, it emits greenhouse gases, CO2 and methane, into the atmosphere. What this is, it's what we call a climate feedback. It's a self-reinforcing loop whereby warming induces more greenhouse gas emissions. It's absolutely essential that this feedback loop not get going strongly. If it does, there's simply no way to control it.
Most people are unaware that global warming may ignite the ice carbon bomb. 1,500 gigatons of carbon is frozen in Arctic land masses. There's even more in the ocean. This is why plus 1.5 degrees Celsius keeps climate scientists up at night. And the more carbon dioxide emissions, the warmer it will get. In 2009, climate scientists published in Nature that the safe zone of carbon dioxide is at or below 350 parts per million in the atmosphere. We soared past the safe zone of 350 parts per million in 1988. We're now at 410 parts per million. Dr. James Hansen is probably the most respected climate scientist. He published that there's an approximate 40-year climate lag between carbon concentration and global warming. So adding 40 years to 1988 brings us to about 2030. 2030 is a year the IPCC projected we'd see plus 1.5 degrees Celsius. Most people are concerned that plus 1.5 degrees Celsius would increase severe weather events and food and water shortages. But what is sadly overlooked is that we will probably set off the ice carbon bomb at plus 1.5 degrees Celsius. Even plus 1 degree centigrade is dangerous, and climate scientists now agree we're already at plus 1. NASA released a time-lapse animation of the disappearing Arctic polar ice cap. In the animation, the whiter the ice, the older and thicker it is. Thick ice sheets prevailed in the 1980s, as indicated by bright white. Here is the polar ice cap 10 years later. Fast forward 20 years, and the Arctic is now dominated by younger, thinner ice. If the ice carbon bomb rapidly releases as methane, a powerful greenhouse gas, then we could see temperatures rise quickly. And Arctic methane emissions are not in the IPCC projections. Here is a heat map showing Arctic methane emissions. In October 2002, Arctic Ocean ice methane emissions were low, as denoted by yellow and orange. By October 2012, 100,000 square miles of ocean began releasing methane, as denoted by red. Accordingly, world-renowned ecologist Dr. Bill Ripple published the World Scientist's Warning of a Climate Emergency. The article stated, "We declare, with more than 11,000 scientist signatories from around the world, clearly and unequivocally, that planet Earth is facing a climate emergency."
That was pretty shocking. So let's break things down. 1. There's too much carbon in the atmosphere. It's enough to push us over 1.5 degrees Celsius. And 2, renewable energy reduces the amount of carbon we add to the atmosphere. It does not remove carbon from the atmosphere. Fortunately, a practical solution to remove atmospheric carbon was discovered. But here's the thing. It involves diet change, a major undertaking for most people. All I ask is that you keep an open mind as to how food choice matters and how we can work together to solve climate change.
The IPCC explained that there was about 589 gigatons of carbon stored in the atmosphere in the year 1750. From 1750 to 2015, we added 240 gigatons of carbon. The orange bars here represent the carbon we added since 1750. So how do we remove enough carbon out of the atmosphere? The answer is better land use. It's subtle, but makes a world of difference. An IPCC report indicates that 35% of the usable land area of the planet is used to just graze animals. On average, we feed our animals 40 pounds of food for 1 pound of meat. And the animals consume almost 50% of the grain on Earth. So if the world goes vegan, food is plentiful and land is plentiful. Remember how 35% of the usable land area on Earth is used to graze animals? Well, if the world goes vegan, That's all extra land. If you take 41% of this extra land and restored the original forests on it, it would sequester 265 gigatons of carbon out of the atmosphere. That is more than the 240 gigatons of carbon that we added to the atmosphere from 1750 to 2015. We can literally reverse climate change. CO2 levels would return to the safe zone. If you want to know how fast the forests will come back, here's an example in 2002. In 2006, it looked like this. All we had to do is take the livestock out and the forest came back. It took 4 years. The climate solution was presented to the European Parliament by Dr. Sailesh Rao. Here's another example. A coffee plantation that became a forest within 20 years.
The science is clear. I suggest we set brave goals on food, communication by sharing this documentary with others, and carbon, which includes both carbon emission reductions and donations to plant food forests. The organization Sadhana Forests plants trees to help people establish food security on their own land. Or in other words, we can fundamentally shift how we address world hunger by creating food abundance where it's needed most.
You give the people trees to plant around their homes, they establish a food forest to live really well, really a healthy life, and surplus to sell to others.
We teamed up with Sadhana Forests because their tree survival rates are the best in class in severely degraded land, where food forests improve livelihoods and uplift families.
After 5 to 7 years, when this food forest will be mature, you will have food security for your family for generations. Now it's time for us to scale up our activities. We would love to have a mobile reforestation unit to go and visit village by village and reforest them, give a public training to all the people and give them the trees from the truck and plant them with them, build the tree guards and move on. And we think we could start a huge tree planting movement, and that's our dream, that's our vision. And we are really together in this for the long ride.
In part 1 of this series, we presented the first segment of the film, which discussed the vital importance of tree planting and reforestation in halting climate change. On today's program, we continue with the second segment of United in Heart, Hunger and Climate Solutions.
If we want to solve climate change, we need to understand tree planting is only half the story. So let me share with you a couple video clips taken from scientific presentations. These clips explain how diet and rainwater conservation activate Earth's regenerative life forces.
In 1992, after the Rio summit, there were 3 conventions formed at the UN. There were 3 major problems identified. The first was biodiversity loss, the second was ecosystems collapse, and the third was climate change. So they formed 3 conventions: the Convention on Biological Diversity, the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. How often do we ever hear about the first 2? But we keep track of the fever, the climate change. I'm a systems engineer, so I look at it from a systems perspective. So I was looking at the 3 major problems, and so where is the best place to go study these 3 major problems in one spot? So I went to this village in Rajasthan, India, which is on the edge of the Thar Desert. If you look, this is the satellite map of the world, and if you look, this desert starts at the western edge of Africa, goes all the way into India, and becomes the Thar Desert there. It goes all the way into China and becomes the Gobi Desert there. It is one contiguous desert. And if you know your history, right, you know that this is where the major civilizations of the world were. That's where Egyptian civilization, Babylonian civilization, Persian civilization, Indus Valley civilization, Chinese civilization, they were all in this region, and the desert happened. You see, the reason there is a lot of deforestation and desertification happening in this region is because the vegetation is eaten by livestock or farmed animals, and then we milk the farmed animals and sell the milk to the people in the city. So the biomass from the forest is now disappearing into the city, including the nutrients from the forest. Or we raise goats, and then we sell the goats to people in the city to eat. So the biomass from the forest is now, including the nutrients, is disappearing into the city. So over time, we are depleting the forest. When goats finish eating, they leave nothing behind because they even eat the roots. So it becomes a desert. So it was clear that anything new is eaten by animals or domestic animals, and anything old that is in the forest is being cut down and burnt for firewood. So the forest was being attacked from below and from above, and it was dying.
Forests play a critical role in halting climate change. Living trees, the ground cover, and even the soil in a forest draw massive amounts of CO2 out of Earth's atmosphere. The term carbon stock means the amount of CO2 that has been sequestered from the atmosphere and is now being stored within the living biomass of the forest ecosystem.
Because if you look at the global land carbon stock, the land carbon stock is high where the forests are, and it's low where the deserts are. And on land, there is 3 times as much carbon as in the atmosphere. So there is tremendous potential to sequester the carbon on land from the atmosphere. So you can see how the dense land carbon stock corresponds to the forests. This is the Amazon, this is the Congo, the 2 major tropical forests still left. But they're being eaten right now, as we speak, by our farmed animals. You can see the cows surrounding the Amazon, they're eating into it. You can see them surrounding the Congo. So as we expand our consumption of animal foods, more and more of these forests are being destroyed. And take a look at India. That's lacto-vegetarianism, because India has about 600 million lacto-vegetarians.
To Sailesh's point, a 2019 publication in Science indicates that if we add 1 trillion trees to the Earth, we'll cut the atmospheric carbon pool by 25%. But deforestation is outpacing reforestation. Sadly, we're clearing 1 acre per second of Amazon rainforest to make room for our animal agriculture.
%80 of all rainforest loss in the Amazon is due to raising cattle, with another 10% lost due to growing crops to feed them and other livestock. And remember, these livestock are grazing. It's not a matter of factory farming. We've already lost numerous ancient tribes, over 90 of them, shaman, undiscovered medicinal plants, and millions of living things. We'll never see them again. It's quite easy to quantify our global depletion of land with far too much of it being used for the wrong purpose. I mean, you can see this just about everywhere. This is how much land is being used to raise livestock. 45% of the entire land mass on Earth. It's simply terribly inefficient. You can produce 15 times more protein from plants as you can from meat on any given area of land. You can produce anywhere from 5,000 to 45,000 pounds of plant foods on 1 acre of land versus 480 pounds. At best. That's stretching at best, of meat or animal products on 1 acre. It's shocking, knowing just how much land on Earth is used for raising animals, how terribly inefficient this really is. There are nearly 1 billion people suffering from hunger. This year alone, 6 million children will die from starvation. Well, 82% of the world's starving children live in countries where food is fed to animals that are then killed and eaten by more well-off individuals in developed countries. 1/4 of all grain produced by third world countries is now given to livestock in their country or out. In 2012, there was considered a record harvest of grain in the world, 2.6 billion tons. But half of that was fed to animals in the meat and dairy industries. 77% of all coarse grains produced in the world now go to livestock. We can't blame climate change then, droughts or flooding, for the world's food security issues. Most of our food's going to the wrong place.
Let's face it, we are ignoring our children's basic needs. The World Health Organization reported that 6 million children starved to death in 2009 alone. I know it's uncomfortable, but we need to ask ourselves how we can help. I believe the braver our food and communication goals, the more of a difference we can make, not only for the impoverished Black, brown, and tan children of the Global South and the East, but for all children by helping us prevent the worst effects of climate change.
Now, isn't this a beautiful countryside scene? Beautiful blue skies and green grass and rolling hills. This happens to be in the northeast section of Victoria, Australia, where I was researching the ecological effects of their food choices. And I also see something else, which is the main reason I visited this specific area to research. I mean, lock in this area, or this view, for just a moment as we advance. We're going to leave this area. We're going to just get out of the car and go down the road a few hundred yards and get off our bikes. And this is what we see. This 1,000-year-old forest is what that cattle ranch used to be. And it was the home to numerous insects, plants, and animals. There are 3 different types of eucalyptus trees growing here, and one animal in particular that I was looking for, which is now endangered due to destroying its home. It's this little guy. All of his family members were killed. Thousands are each year. He now lives in a small, remote rescue area.
The koala is an example of how lack of awareness leads to destruction, turmoil, and death. But don't lose hope. We can educate ourselves, and we can restore the life-protective forces of Mother Earth.
On today's program, we present the final segment of the film, starting with Mr. Avram Rosen, Executive Director of the non-profit organization Satana Forest, describing how desertification can be reversed through the careful conservation of rainwater.
Desertification is a malignant process. It is consuming our planet, just like cancer can consume a human's body. The Sahara is moving south very, very fast, taking more and more of the savanna and the forest over and making it into unusable land where there's no livelihood for people. And I see people leaving their homes because they can't sustain themselves, and they're becoming homeless in nearby towns and cities. This is so sad. What we need to do is keep much more water on the land so that nature can do the work for us and supply us the water. We don't need to depend on commuting water from very far away. We need to depend on local water going into local aquifers and then being pumped locally and supporting the farmers and other people that live on the land. When we came here 7 years ago, my wife, my daughter, and I, this looked like the moon. It was a lunar landscape. It was very white, very barren, and we wanted to plant a tropical dry evergreen forest on this barren land. And we started by planting trees. Soon enough, we discovered that planting trees is not enough, and we have to keep the water on the land. What makes this land so arid is the fact that all the rainwater that falls in the monsoon just goes away. So we started doing a lot of water conservation work, just stopping the water everywhere we could through check dams and swales and bunds and gabions and different methods of stopping the water. And this has worked miracles. The result is 6 meters increase in the water table and a lot of vegetation that is growing here. Then people can harvest it in their wells for their agriculture or for their domestic uses, and of course for drinking. In the process, we established a community of volunteers. We have 1,000 volunteers a year coming here from more than 50 countries doing the work on the land, bringing their own ideas and creativity, and of course spreading the word out. We chose to do Sadna Forest Haiti, our second project, in the poorest place in Haiti, in a place called Ansapit. Very few NGOs want to go there. We bring with us not just expertise, but optimism. Desertification is not just a physical problem, it's a social problem. And Sadna Forest's role is also to introduce faith into the people living there, faith in their land, faith in their ability to stay there and to live a good, fulfilling life.
Nous venons là, c'est pas pour jouer, c'est pour bien. Nous pas venir là pour jouer, ni rien. Mais nous venons là pour nous aider pour nous travailler ici. Pour nous aider à planter choukoukou.
Et lancer avec reboisement, parce que le reboisement c'est véritable tout ça. Le reboisement c'est lui-même son la vie. Ouais, sur déboiser ou déboiser un pied bois nul, et bien c'est pays au crâne. Pas qu'on peut pays au crâne. Tandis que un grand pied bois, on va qu'on qui va aller danger pour faire. Le réussi qu'on bois dans savane. Mais le réussi planter 2-3 avant puis on va qui sort. Ouais.
Before we suggest the way forward, let's address the elephant in the room. Don't we need to eat meat and animal products like milk, cheese, and eggs for human health? Here's what nutrition experts say.
The American Dietetic Association is the largest U.S. organization of professional dietitians and nutritionists and represents over 100,000 credentialed practitioners. In 2009, the association released an official position paper about vegetarian and vegan diets. It stated that appropriately planned vegetarian diets, including total vegetarian or vegan diets, are healthful and nutritionally adequate. It further explains that well-planned vegetarian diets are appropriate for individuals during all stages of the life cycle, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood and adolescence, and for athletes.
There's more to it than surviving on a vegan diet. We can actually thrive on one. Please consider this health perspective from cardiologist Dr. Kim Williams, the former president of the American College of Cardiology.
A patient that's coming into cardiology has had an event, and it's not always a stroke. It's usually a heart attack, peripheral artery disease. They have blood pressure that's out of control. They understand that they have a problem, and that's a teachable moment. And we get that all the time. And so when the patient's in the coronary care unit, I'm usually seeing them, because I'm not doing invasive cardiology, I'm seeing them on rounds the next morning. Okay, so I say, I'm going to ask you to do a little quiz with me, just to tell me where you are in terms of your thinking. And I'm going to ask you some questions, and they sound a little silly, but yeah, just humor me, and let's see how far we can get with this. Tell me what happened to you while you're here. And they say, I had a heart attack. That's right. How did the heart attack happen? Well, they told me I had a blocked artery. That's right. Okay. What was it blocked with? Plaque? That's right. What is plaque made out of? Fat and cholesterol? That's exactly right. And where did that fat and cholesterol come from? The patient says, 100% of the time, I ate it. It all started in the early 1900s. That coronary heart disease was actually the cause of that chest pain that people get, and that coronaries can actually clot off. The so-called coronary thrombosis is the technical term. It was actually discovered by James Herrick, who actually was a Rush physician. And it turns out that there was a little bit of a gap, 1918, when it wasn't the leading cause of death in the United States because of the Spanish flu epidemic, really a worldwide devastating flu. And yeah, if you take out 675,000 Americans from one disease, heart disease fell to number 2 that year. That epidemic lasted 3 years, and heart disease was back as number 1 by 1919. And it's been there ever since. And that's really because of what we do. It has to do with lifestyle. The chair is the new cigarette. People need an early release program from their sofas, and we need to stop eating animal products with high saturated fat, high sugar, refined carbohydrates. If we do all that, which would be a whole food plant-based diet, and we're doing the exercise, we're paying attention to our weight, blood pressure, cholesterol, no one's smoking, we can actually do this. It's not hard. Rush University is known for having a large number of plant-based, vegetarian and vegan cardiologists, and we really try to change the outcome of our patients by not just the modern guideline-driven management of medications and revascularizations and the latest therapies that you can do with this device or that one, but really changing what we like to say, changing the paradigm by turning off the faucet. And people have heard that hopefully many times instead of mopping up the floor. We really do like to improve people's outcomes.
Arvin and I went vegan the day after he heard Dr. Sailesh Rao present the climate solution. It was a no-brainer because we have kids and we want them to live full lives.
Our kids are also why we created this documentary, or in other words, we must work together to solve climate change. You see, if we each go our own way and disregard how our food, carbon, and communication choices affect each other, then we all lose. But if we change our perspective from private to united in heart, we unlock the vast potentialities of our highest ideals.
And together, we'll advance the great transition, which is explained here.
So we can use renewable energy, a plant-based diet, and the internet to amplify the great transition to a thriving, socially just, and sustainable Earth.
This is why we ask you to set brave goals on food, carbon, and communication.
Our collective goal is to educate and empower people so that governments rapidly engage in vegan reforestation. Our app facilitates this process through a video platform on the climate emergency, the great transition, how to go vegan, and vegan health considerations.
Thanks for watching and best wishes.
On today's program, we present an interview with Mr. Arvin Paranjpe, who explains the 3 greatest environmental threats facing humanity today.
In 1992, there were 3 environmental threats to humanity that were identified, and they are biodiversity loss, ecosystems collapse, and climate change. Biodiversity and ecosystems sustain us. They produce oxygen, they ensure that there's water flowing through the water cycle so we have fresh water, and they ensure that we have healthy soils. So let's go into maybe a specific example, the ocean. The ocean, sadly, is dying. Without fish, the ocean ecosystem will collapse. And the ocean is responsible for 50% of the oxygen on Earth. And it sequesters, or in other words, removes 25% of the carbon dioxide that we emit. So there's no life on Earth if the ocean is dead. Similarly, if temperatures get too high, then Earth will become uninhabitable. It will be unsafe for humans to be here.
With widespread droughts, devastating floods, record-breaking hurricanes, and unprecedented forest fires occurring around the world, climate change has become an extremely urgent issue, in fact a global crisis. The primary solution proposed by United in Heart is a shift to the vegan lifestyle. Currently, raising livestock animals consumes 45% of the landmass on Earth. According to scientific research, if this land were used to grow plant-based foods, all the inhabitants of Earth could be easily fed using much less land. Then the surplus land could be reforested. Arvin refers to this concept as vegan reforestation.
Vegan reforestation is reforesting extra land made available by switching to veganism. The standard American diet requires 10 to 13 times more land than the vegan diet. And our animals consume about 50% of the grain on Earth. So if we switch to a vegan diet, we will actually free up 35% of the usable land area on Earth. And if we reforest a substantial portion of this land, we will actually remove a significant amount of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere if we engage in a massive worldwide effort to rapidly engage in vegan reforestation. Then actually food, water, and land will be plentiful. And at the same time, we will sequester enough atmospheric carbon to return to the safe zone, and we will have effectively solved climate change.
In addition to widespread reforestation using native trees, United in Heart also promotes the planting of food forests. A food forest not only sequesters CO2, but also provides much needed food.
A food forest is a diverse planting of edible trees and plants that mimic patterns found in nature. Food forests uplift lives by providing food security for people in need. Let's take Haiti as an example. In Haiti, 1 out of 3 people are going hungry, and they get about 30 grams of protein per day, which means they're protein deficient. Now, a Maya nut tree, a mature one, produces 250 kilograms of Maya nuts per year, which comes to 45 grams of protein per day. So a person in Haiti can see a 50% increase in the amount of protein intake on a daily basis, thanks to 1 Maya nut tree. This is why we say 60 tree plantings in our food forest program uplifts at least 1 family.
Through their Climate Solutions documentary, the organization encourages every person on Earth to take part in halting climate change. According to Arvin, there are 3 constructive steps that everyone can take.
All our lives we've been told that environmentalism is about defense. Consume less, drive less, fly less. But what if we can dribble, pass, and shoot? What if we can do something constructive? And it turns out there are 3 constructive actions we can do to remove atmospheric carbon and to recharge biodiversity. And those are food, carbon, and communication. Veganism, vegan reforestation, and communication about the first 2. This is why we ask people to set brave goals on food, carbon, and communication in our free app.
To quickly disseminate the facts about climate change and its most effective solutions, United in Heart created a cell phone app called Uplift Humanity. This app inspires users to adopt a vegan lifestyle, share the Climate Solutions documentary with family, friends, and colleagues, and support the planting of food forests through such organizations as Satana Forest. Through this app, they hope to educate and empower millions of people and encourage governments to rapidly engage in vegan reforestation. Despite the dire urgency of global warming, Edwin has great faith in humanity. In fact, he views the current critical situation as a great opportunity for advancements on Earth.
I think that we are living in very scary times, and I would just say to people that, continue to have faith. Have faith in yourself, have faith in humanity, and have faith in your spiritual teacher. In Hinduism, we have this concept of Shraddha, which means both faith and resolve. And, I think that we have nothing to worry about if we have the faith and we have the resolve to carry out the teachings of the great gurus of humanity. And in fact, I believe that we're going to undergo what I call the twin renaissances, which is regeneration of the natural world and the renaissance of the human spirit.
Citing the many climate-related disasters our Earth is experiencing, our beloved Supreme Master Ching Hai frequently reminds us about the imminent dangers of climate change and shares the simplest and most effective solution, the organic vegan diet.
In short, simply saying no to meat will make us richer, healthier, and most importantly, it will make us a wiser person and a great hero, because it is the only timely way that will ensure the survival of our children and grandchildren. We now can see how imperative it is to stop the warming of the planet with the greenness of all green policies and actions. The most compassionate, the most heroic, the most life-saving action, that is, the vegan diet. Organic vegan, to be exact, is better for your health as well. It is the long-term insurance against climate change. We must be the solution and encourage others with all the convincing and supporting scientific, physical, and moral data that is available to us, so they do the same. Adopting a plant-based diet can halt as much as 80% of global warming, eradicate world hunger, stop war, promote peace, and it will free up the Earth's water as well as many other precious resources, offering a lifeline for the planet and for humanity. In short, it will very quickly halt many of the global problems facing us right now. Therefore, it is vital that we change our lifestyle. It's very easy to do it. Setting a noble example for others to follow, and do our part to bring to the public's attention the urgent climate change issues and its solutions. The foremost being vegan diet, the vegan diet, to safeguard our precious planet. It is time to walk the talk because there is not much time left now.
Our sincere thanks go to Supreme Master Ching Hai for her precious wisdom and clarity. May we join together in praying that we soon realize a world that's vegan and at peace. We also express our gratitude to Arvin and Nandhini Paranjpe and United in Heart for your tireless efforts to halt climate change. May you be blessed abundantly for your noble work. For more information on United in Heart, please visit unitedinheart.org. Wise viewers, thank you for your attentive company today during our program. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television for the heartfelt work of Stephanie Besson and Those Migrants. We are all migrants. Part 1 of 2, right after Noteworthy News. Through heaven's grace, may all beings quickly adopt the vegan lifestyle for the benefit of future generations.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/PE.
Vegans, the heroes of our time.